So this is pretty nuts. We've had footage allegedly come out that appears to show a Tic Tac live on camera during a Starship launch, which apparently is the bee's knees. It's completely legit. I mean, we're going to dive into it. We're going to have a little look at it, but we're also going to be talking about some strange things that have been stated by Ross Coulthart over on his podcast, the Reality Check podcast, of course. Not necessarily strange things, but where he kind of covers some very strange topics, if that makes sense. But obviously, before we get into it, be sure to drop a like and subscribe to be kept up to date with all things UAP, Alien, and the rest of it. But let's get into it. So the first thing that I wanted to talk to you about is this Tic Tac that was allegedly caught by Tiago. Now, Tiago, I'll get into the details of him in just a moment. But basically, this footage allegedly shows, well, it is footage from SpaceX's Starship Flight 11, which was launched on October 13th, 2025, where this astronomer, Tiago, from Dobsonian Power Channel, identifies a white oblong tic-tac shaped object at the timestamp around 26 minutes and 40 seconds in, moving against the sky in a manner he deems inconsistent with reflections or known artifacts. Now, Tiago does go on in this footage to enhance the low resolution onboard camera feed to reveal the object's smooth, non-rotating profile, distinguishing it from his frequent moon glare observations, though he offers no definitive explanation beyond calling it anomalous, which is obviously very interesting, especially coming from an astronomer. Now, this sighting, of course, fuels UAP disclosure around rocket launches, echoing patterns in peer-reviewed analysis like the 2021 ODNI report on UAP clustering near aerospace sites. But, of course, as of right now, it does lack corroboration from SpaceX telemetry or independent verification to dismiss prosaic causes like orbital debris. Now, let's take a little look at the footage together, because obviously this is interesting, and it's not the first time that we've seen something like this happen on a space launch. Sometimes the NASA live feed does get cut out, and it's been very well documented that something anomalous will come into frame, and then suddenly the feed will be shut down, and then to be reinstated again, you know, maybe 30 seconds later once the camera's usually shifted. It's not out of the realms of possibility that that's something that does happen. But let's take a little look at the footage here.
This is a picture that was from the Starship. I increased the brightness and everything to see it better, and you can see something here. And it's in the moment that you have the 1600 in the timer. 1600. At T 1600. You move till then. There's something here that we don't know what is it. And this is something that pops there and stays for a while. What is it, Thiago? I have no freaking idea. Man. I just wanted to report this because I thought it was weird. Now, let's be neutral. We have the moon here. You see this light? I believe it's the moon. The light of the moon. Mainstream will tell you that's a reflection from the moon. I will not tell you anything because I don't know. I have reflections from the moon during my all-sky views of the meteor showers that I do for years with my camera. Actually, the next ones will be very interesting because I'm waiting for the antenna. They say it arrives tomorrow to put on my roof, and I will mount it to see if next week we can test it to check everything in space. And when the moon is very bright and rising, we see reflections, and oftentimes I have to explain people that ask in the chat, what's that? That looks like a bulb, a spaceship or something. And I say, that's a glare from the reflection of the brightness of the moon. It's too bright tonight. But it's not like this. You will see in the live streams, and you can see in my playlist of All Sky. If you go there, check randomly, and when it's the moon there, you see that they are like the shape of the moon or like bulbs. Not tic-tacs. And not a single one here. That's what I can say to you.
Now, I'm no, I mean, this person is going to know a hell of a lot than me. He researches it. He's an astronomer. I'm not, and I'm not going to try and pretend that I know more than an astronomer. So, of course, you know, this is very anomalous. All right, and I will also probably use that term because it looks very solidified. You know, we don't know what this is either, but obviously the focus is, of course, just on this image here. Now, when we look back at the image that was shared by Tiago here, of course, this is kind of one of the flares that he was mentioning from the moon. And yes, a lot of people will draw comparisons from this to this. This to this, of course, because there are similarities. Now, this is a lot less opaque. It's a lot more, you know, you can kind of see through it a bit more. Clearly, that is a bit more of a lens flare, or a flare from the moon, because you can see this little bubble around the edge as well. So you can see the way that the light is traveling and the way that it's kind of hitting us, and, you know, obviously these things as well. And this does look as if it's part of this kind of bubble, as almost an origin point, let's call it. Whereas when you've got this, of course, it does look a little bit more solidified. It looks a bit more tic-tac. It looks a bit more all over the place. People are going to be very intrigued by this, and they are going to start asking questions. And I think someone like Tiago, for example, would be the best person to ask said questions because, like I said before, he's an astronomer. He understands these things far better than I can possibly ever wish to understand these things. I just found it really interesting. I wanted to pose it to you guys. Do you think that that could be a UAP, or do you think it's a flare? What I obviously like about Tiago as well, he doesn't go straight to the, oh, that's a UAP. He goes, well, actually, let's be diplomatic about this. Let's kind of see it from both sides. And I do appreciate that kind of stuff, because that's my kind of thought processes as well. Not to kind of straight up debunk things, but to kind of look at it from a pragmatic point of view and say, there is also a possibility that it's this, that it's that it's not a UFO. But moving on from that, kind of keeping in the theme of live feeds and stuff like this, Ross Coulthart was posed a question over on his most recent podcast episode that he dropped yesterday, where he was asked about, like, you know, he says he watched NASA cut live feeds when something unexplained appeared on screen. A space agency built to explore the unknown, cutting the feed the moment something unknown shows up. NASA is proactively deciding what we get to see and when. So this is something that obviously I mentioned to kind of caveat before, which is, you know, it's been very well documented that NASA will cut the live feed when something weird shows up, which obviously kind of goes against the objective of the live feed, which is to capture the unknown. And then when you capture the unknown, obviously, you know, you then just cut it short. Let's take a little listen to see what he's got to say.
Hi, Megan. How are you, hon? I am good. Can you ask Ross what his thoughts are on NASA cutting the live feed from Mars when 3i Atlas went past? Everything was going well. Then they turned into a gray screen. What are they hiding?
You know, it's funny. I never believed any of the NASA conspiracy theories until very, very recently. I always thought it was nonsense that NASA cut the feed, and I now realize someone is cutting the feed because I've seen it. I've actually seen it happen. I can't comment one way or the other about the 3i Atlas feed being cut because, frankly, I just don't know if it was. I assume that there was a disruption. And look, disruptions do happen to transmissions. Obviously, it's a big thing to be able to receive or send a transmission across space. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if occasionally there are disruptions. But I'll tell you my story, which I have told before, but I was invited to tour as a VIP the Marshall Space Center when I was giving a speech at the Huntsville Scientific Coalition for the Study of UAPs 2 years ago. And it was a great opportunity, and I remain very grateful to the local director of NASA on location, who very kindly ushered me around with the wife of another former NASA administrator, Mike Griffin. And while we were on location in the viewing room, where there's a huge bank of video feeds from the space station, the International Space Station, we were looking at the feeds with the director of the Marshall Space Center talking to me with his back to those screens. And there's the control room for the receiving of signals and control of the space station to my right that we're looking at through this glass window. And as he's talking to me, Rebecca nudges me and goes, look. And there are maybe 8 or 9 egg-shaped objects moving from behind the space station, and the camera is pointed out into interstellar space. And you see these egg-shaped objects just tracking along in formation very, very slowly. And I very naively asked the director of the Marshall Space Center, excuse me, sir, are they Starlink satellites? Has somebody just released Starlink satellites? And he turns, looks at the feed, sees the objects, and then he looks through the window into the main control room, and they flick a switch, and they do it right in front of us. Transmission to the space station has been interrupted. Now, I don't know what happened. I'm not suggesting any sinister motive on the part of the director of the Marshall Space Center, but I saw it happen, and so did 2 other people, including the wife of a former NASA administrator. So it happened. And the thing that interested me was it almost seemed to be routine. And when I went back to try and look at feeds to see if I could find what I'd seen, it wasn't there. So I've seen a disruption to the feed, and it made me feel very, very uncomfortable. What I was seeing was clearly anomalous to people in the room, and I never got an explanation. The director went, he had to move on because he was committed on other tasks, but I never got an explanation for what that was, which remains profoundly interesting. As for the 3i Atlas video feed disruption, I didn't see it happen. I don't know anything about it, but I can tell you I've seen strange disruptions to the feeds, the video feeds, through NASA.
That's pretty nuts, isn't it? I mean, it's one thing to kind of see it for yourself. I mean, it always goes kind of viral when people see these things, and it's well documented. These videos of the NASA feed where something ever so slightly kind of comes into frame, and then suddenly the feed's cut off for about 30 seconds, a minute, and then suddenly it comes back on, but the angle's shifted ever so slightly. It's well documented, well trodden territory. It's quite funny as well that's kind of the way that people manage the situation, and what can we do? But it does add into this narrative of, if we're not why are we not allowed to see these things? The whole idea of the International Space Station, the whole idea of these live feeds is so that the normal people like myself and you guys get to have a bit of a foot in the door with what goes on outside of our atmosphere, because we can't see what goes on outside our atmosphere all the time. And then the second that something interesting happens, feed goes dead, intermission, interrupted, whatever you want to call it, and then suddenly whatever was intriguing to see is suddenly gone. It's crazy. It is crazy. I mean, you'd always think that maybe someone like Elon Musk would probably be a bit more open about it, because he's very pro speech and freedom of speech and all the rest of it. So you'd think that someone like him probably wouldn't really care, but NASA, of course, I don't know. I'm not going to say that they're actively adding into this campaign of cover-ups, but it's very interesting that their feeds get cut every time something interesting happens. What do you guys think about this? Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. We're down there. Jump to get the hell out of that like button and subscribe. And until next time, I'll speak to you later. Peace.